Hi, this is Bryce with Frostbite Cosplay. A couple of days ago we posted a video on how to make foam look like metal from a Facebook Live video that I did. I got a lot of questions about that and people wanting more information, so we're going to go ahead and go through it in a little more detail here today. Now to start with, I've taken some foam and it's just been coated with Plasti-Dip. Now we're also going to need a paper towel. And because we use Plasti-Dip here, we're going to use acrylic paints. If I'd used latex, we'd have to use rubber cement paints, just depending on what you sealed with, what paint you need is going to base on that. To start with, we're going to use some Folk-Art brand Gunmetal Gray, Vallejo Air Copper, Vallejo Air Chrome, and some Liquitex Professional Heavy Body Gold. These are all acrylic-based paints, and you can use whatever you've got available. However, you want to make sure, especially with silvers, that it's got a high pigment, because a lot of the cheaper acrylics don't. So to start with, we're going to take our gunmetal and use it as our base coat. We'll take a ratty chip brush, kind of get a little bit of it on there, wipe it on the paper towels to get almost all of the paint out. And we're going to just lightly go over our piece here, and it's going to leave just a little bit of that gunmetal paint on there. This is going to be key to giving us a good metallic look, because as we go through and dry brush this, it's going to allow us to build depth with a lot of different colors. If you look at most things in nature and such, there's not just one color to them. There's several different shades and hues involved. The only time that something's really one individual color is when it's been artificially painted. And so if you're wanting something that's going to look like it's raw metal or wood or skin or plants or anything like that, you're going to need to add multiple colors in there to help bring out that depth and that realism. And we're going to accomplish that here with this dry brushing. So as we go through and kind of finish it up with this gunmetal, we're not looking for a total complete coat. It's okay if you can see some brush strokes and kind of, scratchy marks in there. You just want to make sure that you're not applying a lot of paint to it. It needs to be a very thin coat here. Alright, now we're going to take some of our Vallejo copper and we're going to use that to build up some of our color depth. Now, subtlety is kind of the name of the game here, and these are airbrush paint, so they have a very, very high pigment, so we're going to be very careful with it and make sure that we're working the gunmetal out of the brush, getting enough copper in that we can see it. We're going to just lightly go over our gunmetal. You don't need to cover the whole thing. Just making these kind of scratches or whatever, these light marks in there, and just kind of lightly giving it this copper colored hue as we again build up that depth of color. It should be very subtle. If you're seeing big thick brush strokes or thick marks, then you're going heavy or too heavy, and you need to make sure that you're wiping most of the paint out of your brush. Okay, so as you can see, hopefully on the video it'll show up well. We've got just that little bit of a copper color built on there now as we're going over it. Now we're going to take some more gunmetal and do another very thin coat there. We don't want to cover all of the copper, and we want this to be very thin. So we're going to go work most of the copper out of the brush, make sure that we're getting gunmetal instead of more copper there. And we're going to just very lightly go back through and add some more gunmetal over the top of that. Again, don't worry about trying to coat the whole thing. Just a quick, couple of quick passes here and you'll be good to go. Alright, now we're going to take some of our gold, and again, these heavy body acrylics, there's a very high pigment to them. You're not going to need much because, again, we're trying to be very subtle and just add a little bit of depth to our color. We don't want to paint the whole thing gold. So we're going to work the gunmetal out of the brush, make sure we're actually laying down gold. Wiping most of it off on the towel. And now we're going to go and just lightly give it some gold to go over that gunmetal hue. Now ideally you should still be able to make out some of the copper tones, some gunmetal tones. We're going to add these gold tones, and when we're finished you should have a nice deep color that looks very good and very real. Okay, we're going to work the gold out of the brush, apply a little more gunmetal. Alright, we're going to just lightly, again, another coat, making sure that we're not trying to coat the whole thing. We're just going through and building up that color a little more. Alright, and finally, we're going to go over it with some chrome. This is one that it's very easy to overdo. We're going to want to make sure we're using, very little, and being subtle with it. The chrome will especially show up well if you have sharp edges or corners on your piece. Then it's going to do a great job at highlighting those as you go over with this dry brush. Unfortunately, this round piece here was the only thing that I had ready, readily plasti dipped and available, and I wanted to get this video out as soon as I could just because I have got a lot of questions on it. And so we're going to go through and just lightly apply some of this chrome here. Alright. Now, as you can see, we've got a good metal looking color here. This is a trick that I use a lot. It's how I got my Reinhardt to look as good as it does. Things like that is just by that building colors and that subtly building depth to get that metal look. And so I hope that this video has been informational and helpful for you all. Thank you for joining me, and good luck with your next projects.